Welcome back, everyone, to episode 3 as we take a look at some of the amazing photographs of history that maybe you've never had a chance to see, or maybe you haven't seen for a long time, or maybe you just didn't know what you were looking at. So if you did not see the first 2 episodes, there are links in the description down below, but I'll also throw up links at the end of the video. In this particular video, we are also going to take some time to debunk a few photographs that claim to be of a particular person or a particular event that aren't really what they claim to be. Because some of you have been suggesting some of those photos to me, so I want to make sure we cover that. Tomorrow we're going to get back to some other stuff. We're going to be taking a look at part 2 of the story of Eleanor of Aquitaine, and we will definitely continue looking at photographs like this in the future as an ongoing series here and there. So this particular photograph is a quite famous one. This is in March of 1865. This is the second inaugural address of Abraham Lincoln. You see Lincoln right here holding his notes for the speech, one of the greatest speeches in American history. This is the one, it's when you go to the Lincoln Memorial, on one side there's the Gettysburg Address, and on the other side is this second inaugural. It's the one where he talks about with malice toward none, with charity for all, with God, or with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right. He talks about binding up the nation's wounds, caring for the widow and the orphan of the soldiers who have died, achieving a lasting peace, not only amongst ourselves, but with all nations. And as he's talking about those things, about peace and reconciliation, in the crowd standing above him is his future assassin, the man who will shoot and kill him just about 6 weeks later, John Wilkes Booth. There's some debate about where he is in this photo. Most people agree it's this guy right here, although other people have claimed that he's over this way a little further, but I think the consensus is that this is probably John Wilkes Booth. We know he was there. We just don't know 100% for sure that that's him. Amazing photo. This is one I've actually shown before in a video I did on Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. This comes from the 25th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg, and there are 2 different versions of the photo here. One is usually the one that is seen, and it has them with their hats on, but then there's another one here with their hats off. And who we have in this photograph, I'll talk about the one on the left first. Right here on the left, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, he of Little Round Top and the 20th Maine. Next to him here is wearing, I believe that's probably his Medal of Honor. The Medal of Honor and the GAR, Grand Army of the Republic Medal, are very similar. The only difference is where they're or where the ribbon is placed in relation to the other parts. But both of these guys are Medal of Honor recipients. Butterfield got his in 1862, or it was for action in 1862. But Dan Butterfield's best known as the guy who composed taps, which you hear played military funerals, things like that. He's actually buried at West Point, even though he never attended West Point, which is kind of amazing. One of the largest graves there, by the way. The guy in the middle, General James Longstreet, who by this time is a Republican and kind of vilified in the South. He actually serves at one time as the U.S. minister to the Ottoman Empire, which is pretty amazing. Next to him, with the missing leg, that is Dan Sickles, who would be a regular at these reunions. He was at the 50th reunion in 1913. Interesting, I don't know about Butterfield, but Chamberlain, Longstreet, and Dan Sickles all lived into the 20th century. I think Longstreet died like around 1904. Chamberlain and Sickles died about 10 years later. In this other version of the photograph, between, you see Butterfield right there, and then between Butterfield and Chamberlain now you have General Henry Slocum, who commanded the 12th Corps at the Battle of Gettysburg. There are others in here as well, but that's the most prominent ones. I just love that photo. Show you another picture taken of, you see Longstreet right here, and I think that's Butterfield again, on their horses now, taken at Gettysburg near one of the monuments. And I just want to read to you a little bit of a description of the meeting between Longstreet and Sickles, because remember, their forces were fighting that day on July 2nd. Sickles lost his leg to Longstreet's men fighting that day. And here's the description. Longstreet is, I think, in his late 60s at this point. And Dan Sickles is 68. And it says, later that day, Longstreet had a private meal at his hotel with 68-year-old Dan Sickles, the first meeting of the former enemies. As commander of the 3rd Corps at Gettysburg, the controversial Sickles lost his right leg to enemy artillery on that battle's second day. They were friends in a moment, according to an account of their meeting, and there was very little eaten at that table for 30 minutes as they talked about events a quarter century old. While the old foes dined, others in the room gawked and let their dinner go almost untouched. Amazing stuff. Really, really cool. Okay, so here's the first one I want to kind of debunk a little bit here. This one is titled "A Young Hitler Cheers the Start of World War I." 1914. Now, here's what we do know about this photo. This photo was taken on August 2nd, 1914. It was taken in Munich in a rally in support of the war against the Allies. And you see that in this photo, it appears to show a very young Adolf Hitler in the photograph. He'd have been, I don't know, 24 at this point, something like that. Let's see, he was born around 1890, so yeah, about that. 24, 25 years old. Now, a couple of problems with this photo. Number one, he didn't look like that in 1914. If you look at photos taken of him during this time when he was in the German army, full mustache, very, very different looking than he is in this photo. This is more of what he looked like in the 1930s. The first time this photo appears anywhere publicly is March 12, 1932. It was published in a party newspaper. And it was claimed at that time that it was indeed a photo, and it was published the day before the presidential election in 1932, after Hitler's opponents had attacked him over his flight from military service in Austria-Hungary and questioned his patriotism. And so this was published to prove how patriotic he was. Look at him cheering for the German army in 1914. And it had captions that kind of talked about him as a man of the people and things like that. Now, the guy who published it says that he found the photo in 1929. But there are other versions of this photograph that have been seen and other angles of this same crowd seen that do not show that same man in any of them. And it's generally believed at this point that he was superimposed into this photograph as a propaganda piece. Probably, I would say even most likely, not true. Now here's one from that same era of history that we know is absolutely true, and it's been widely seen. It's the man who refused to salute. And what's amazing about this is that we have a pretty good idea of who he probably was. It's typically understood that this is a guy named August Landmesser, who at this time, this is 1936, it's in Hamburg, Germany. It's the christening of a new naval vessel, and he would have been 26 years old at this time. And eventually this particular man, if it is indeed August Landmesser, he actually was killed in action in October of 1944, having been drafted into the military as a punishment instead of going to prison. Not for this particular act, but for some other things involving who he was dating and things like that. But there is also a claim that this is someone else. There's a claim by the family of another man named Gustav Weigert, who was significantly older, who would have been in his mid-40s at this time, who was a metal worker at that facility, who his family claimed habitually refused to salute on religious grounds. They've shown documentation that he did indeed work there at this time, and they've showed family photographs that actually do resemble this guy. So there's a good chance this could be August Landmesser, not August Landmesser, but rather Gustav Weigert, who died in 1959. I love this one. This one was taken in 1847. This is Marie Louise, the Duchess of Parma, but she's better known as the second wife of Napoleon Bonaparte. Yes, this is the woman who was married to Napoleon. And she actually, after Napoleon was defeated at Waterloo and exiled, she actually went on to a couple more marriages. Even before Napoleon died, she was married and started having children again. She is the mother of Napoleon Bonaparte's son, Napoleon. And yeah, she lived long enough to be photographed. She actually died at the age of 56 later on the same year this photograph was taken. All right, here's a photo taken in 1914. And the man right here is the man who will very soon be the commanding general of American Expeditionary Forces in Europe. That is John Blackjack Pershing. Next to George Washington, the highest ranking officer in the history of the United States military. This right here next to him is Pancho Villa, who's a Mexican revolutionary that 2 years later Pershing would lead an expedition into Mexico to try and hunt down. But at this time, they're in a photograph together. But I've had a number of people telling me, hey, in that photo of Pershing and Pancho Villa is Pershing's aide-de-camp, none other than George S. Patton. Sorry to disappoint you. The man in this photo is not Patton, and if you look at any photo of Patton taken in this decade, you'll see very quickly that Patton is not in this photograph. A lot of people claim that this is Patton right here. Patton was Pershing's aide 2 years later during the Mexican punitive expedition to hunt down Pancho Villa. He was not at this time. This man in the photo, though, is of some note. His name is Lieutenant James Collins, and his son, Michael Collins, would be the third member of the Apollo 11 mission that landed on the moon. He was the guy who stayed in the capsule while Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong landed on the moon's surface. That was the son of the man in the photograph here. So these next few I want to share with you were sent to me by my friend JD over at the History Underground. And these are military formation photos. I don't know if you've ever seen these, but these were pretty common. Especially back around World War I, World War II time period. This particular one is a human Statue of Liberty. There's 18,000 officers and men in this photograph at Camp Dodge in Des Moines, Iowa. And I'll back out. I'm just going to show you real close. First of all, you can see these are World War I uniforms. So that's about when this is taken. But back out and show you there's 18,000 men in this photo showing the Statue of Liberty. Just amazing. We can zoom in and it starts to get a little blurry, but you can see how far back they go and the work that must have gone into making this look exactly right from the angle that they're at. Just fascinating stuff. This one here shows 100 officers and 9,000 enlisted men at Parris Island, South Carolina. Living emblem showing Marines actually forming the Marine Corps emblem. That one's really cool. They've even got the different colors to show. You can see the North and South America. You can see the anchor. You can see the eagle. Oh, that one is really, really neat. Just look at the detail of this. I wish we had a higher quality of it. Maybe there's one online we can find somewhere. You can see the barracks in the background there. Really, really cool. And then this last one was taken with 21,000 officers and men. I haven't shown it yet because I want to give you a fair warning. This one was 21,000 officers and men taken at Camp Sherman in Chillicothe, Ohio. This one's kind of graphic. It's difficult to look at. It's actually kind of painful. You've been warned. Here it is. Thanks, JD. Thanks a lot. Friend. I don't know the context of this photograph, and if somebody is aware of it, please let me know. I've tried to find it and I couldn't. But it's Joseph Stalin appearing to smile and actually be like joking about something. Now, I know that this was actually a common thing that would be done, like when people would be giving a radio address or recording audio so they knew how far to go from the microphone. So I don't know if that's what's happening here. If somebody knows the context, please use the comment section below and let me know. This one's amazing. This is PFC at the time, Ivan Babcock of the 165th U.S. Signal Company, wearing the 1,000-year-old Imperial Crown of the Holy Roman Empire when it was recovered. It had been taken by the Germans during the Anschluss, when Austria was taken over by the Germans, and was returned by U.S. forces to Austria, and it's on display now, I believe, in Vienna. But this thing's 1,000 years old, and it was used to crown the Holy Roman Emperors going back to the late 900s. This is absolutely amazing, and it's kind of a one-of-a-kind photo. Who in the world will ever have an opportunity to get a picture of themselves wearing that crown? Amazing stuff. This is a photo I had seen before in looking for photos to show you guys, and a couple people suggested this one. So this is taken, I believe, in 1888, and it is the graves of a husband and wife, one of whom was Protestant and one was Catholic. And so they couldn't be buried in the same cemetery. And so they're buried on opposite sides of the wall that separates the cemeteries. And then they have the hands connecting. It's a powerful thing. And, I've seen some people comment on how this is proof of how stupid religion is. And honestly, I just say it's proof of how stupid man is when it comes to how we exercise our religion. There are several images taken of royal cousins, and this is absolutely one of my favorite because it shows them side by side and how much they look like each other. On the left, you have King George V of the United Kingdom. On the right, you have Tsar Nicholas II, the Emperor of Russia. They were first cousins. I believe their mothers were sisters, is how they were closest related. But this was taken in Berlin in 1913. This is just a year before both of their nations would be at war with Germany. And a lot of times they get confused for each other, and at times they would even take photos wearing each other's uniforms, which would make it even more interesting. But I absolutely love this particular photograph of the two. And if you ever are unsure of which one's which, usually the way that I can tell is that Nicholas has narrower eyes than his cousin George V does. And of course, Tsar Nicholas II's wife was also a first cousin to King George V and also to Kaiser Wilhelm II. You can see this photograph here. You've got Queen Victoria near the end of her life. There's Kaiser Wilhelm right there, her eldest grandson. This, I believe, is her son, the future Edward VII, in the photo there. And of course, he is the father of King George V. But Queen Victoria's granddaughter, Alex of Hesse, was the wife of Tsar Nicholas II. So it's all a family thing. They were all related to each other. In fact, the royal family of Britain, the royal house, the name that they should have right now, it'll change after Queen Elizabeth passes away, but she is a part of what was once known as the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, of which the royal houses at one time or another of Bulgaria, Portugal, and Belgium were also a part of that same royal house, all male line descendants of the same guy. So fascinating stuff. I'm going to wrap it up right there for today, as always, with these. Please, if you have photos you'd like to see me include, I know there are some you have suggested I haven't gotten to yet. I will. We'll do another one of these down the road, maybe in a few days to a week or so. Got some other stuff I want to get caught up on. Check out the other photo videos if you haven't seen those yet. I'll throw up the links there. And hit that like button if you would, please. Thanks for watching.